Hello, everyone. Today we'll be discussing resume writing. Before we begin, I want to explain what a resume is and what purpose it serves. A resume is an employment document that summarizes an individual's professional work experience. It highlights their skills, training, educational background, and qualifications needed for the desired job in which he or she is applying for. The purpose of a resume is to advertise yourself to prospective employers by capturing the essence of who you are and why you are the right fit for a particular position. Resume writing is essential to finding a job. Very few companies still use paper or online application these days, so without a strong resume, your chances of landing the job you want will be against you. Luckily, this is where I can help. In this short lecture, I will be covering the important sections that need to be included in every resume. Let's begin. As I cover the guidelines to resume writing, I strongly advise you to access the resume handbook so that you can follow along throughout the lecture. The resume handbook was created to assist students with writing and formatting their resumes and is filled with tips and strategies on how to improve your resume writing skills. The first topic will be the different resume styles. There are 3 different types of resumes, and one is more widely accepted than others. After, I will cover the different sections that need to be included or come highly recommended for your resume. This includes the heading, professional summary, work experience, skills and accomplishments, education and training, and lastly, volunteer experience. I will also be going over the basic requirements for a cover letter and reference page. There will be more on cover letters later in the module. In the resume handbook on page 4, you will see there are 3 kinds of resumes. The resume type that students are most familiar with is the chronological resume. This resume type is the most traditional type and also the most widely accepted format among employers. With this style of resume, you list the professional experience in reverse chronological order. You want to start with the most recent or current job first. Chronological resumes are great for those who want to highlight their job titles, past experiences, and positions. They are also good for those who want to highlight their organizations or companies that they've worked for or show upward mobility or progression within their career. Lastly, the chronological resume is good for those who want to align their work experience with the job posting. Hybrid resumes are good for career changers who also want to highlight their skills, education, and accomplishments. They are also good for those who want to show hiring managers the most valuable or relevant information first. Hybrid resumes are also suitable for those who want to take the pressure off their work history gaps. Lastly, hybrid resumes are good for those who want to appeal to both traditional and non-traditional hiring managers. You can find examples of each type of resumes starting on page 18. On page 20, you will see an example of the hybrid resume. Then on page 22, you will see an example of the functional resume. On the next few slides, I will explain the sections that need to be included. The heading to every resume is pretty straightforward. It should include your name, address, phone number, email, and if you have a LinkedIn profile or a website for your business, then you should include that too. In recent years, including your street name and house number has become optional. Just listing the city and state is acceptable and actually highly encouraged because sometimes employers prefer to hire locally. In your heading, it is important to include a professional sounding email. Cute or funny sounding emails do not give the best first impression. So jimmylovespizza@gmail.com is not okay. However, it is okay to use your school email if you want. I also highly recommend including your LinkedIn URL for your profile in your heading, especially if you have additional work experience but are not able to fit everything in one page. Also, sometimes your email domain can give the employer some assumptions about your age. Those include at Comcast, AT&T, at Yahoo, or even at Hotmail. Gmail or your school email are your safest options. The unfortunate reality is that some employers will be biased and discriminate against who they think don't fit their idea of an employee at their company. It can be related to age, gender, religion, ethnicity, or other ways people identify themselves. Don't let that stop you from being the best version of yourself. At the end of the day, it's their loss and not yours. If you feel like you've been discriminated against or have been treated unfairly within an employment opportunity, and you would like to talk about it some more, please let me know. Right underneath your heading is your professional summary, or sometimes called a resume summary. Before, objective statements were favored, but now have become obsolete because it takes up space without offering anything valuable to the resume. Instead, a professional resume is recommended. A professional summary is a short paragraph that gives the employer a snapshot of who you are professionally. In about 50 words or less, you want to introduce yourself to the reader and provide a quick summary of your most important skills and qualifications. It should highlight what you have done in the past that could benefit your desired employer. Include at least one relevant skill or quality that relates to the job. Summaries can be written in many different ways. Some prefer bullet statements, some prefer short paragraphs, or a combination of both. On page 6 of the handbook is where you can find additional tips on how to write a resume summary, along with some examples. Here are some good examples of what a summary should sound and look like. Administrative assistant with strong work ethic and high level of organizational commitment. Proficient with all aspects of Microsoft Office Suite with creative problem solving and project management skills. Experience with event planning and complex scheduling. The next one. Recent accounting graduate seeking junior level auditor position with mid-sized firm. Strong math, logic, and organizational skills and focused attention to detail. Recently completed internship with XYZ company, volunteered for local NPO, providing account management services. And the last one, certified healthcare assistant with 5 years experience caring for patients, documenting care and administering treatments. Worked with all ages and demographics of patients, caring, compassionate, and dedicated to high quality and culturally sensitive care. Does anyone notice some commonalities within the 3 examples here? Well, the first sentence communicates a career identifier. The next common theme I see is what the job seeker is good at. So they mention the skills that they have, which have been acquired through their experience. Think about what you bring to the table and see how you can incorporate that into your professional summary. Lastly, each one mentions experience. For the administrative assistant, he or she is experienced in event planning and scheduling. For the recent graduate, he or she mentions volunteer experience, and the healthcare worker mentions 5 years of experience working with patients. Overall, there are 3 main components to a resume summary: a career identifier, a mention of skills or abilities, and then the years or type of experience you have. You're welcome to add other information beyond what is suggested to further strengthen your summary. Later in the module, you will see more information on how to craft a professional resume summary. Work experience sometimes can be titled professional experience. You want to make sure you list all your relevant work experience as it relates to your desired job. Tailor your resume using keywords and keyword phrases from the job description. You can pull the keywords from your previous assignment last week from analyzing the job description. You always want to make sure you tailor your resume throughout with the keywords. Remember that article you read on applicant tracking systems and how they work. On page 15 of the resume handbook, you can see an example of how it's done. Basically, you want to extract the most frequently used words in the description. You can also use Google Word Cloud. Google Word Cloud is an add-on within Google Docs. If you're not sure what Google Word Cloud is or how it works, I suggest you tune in to the live class session. As you describe your responsibilities and duties, you want to use quantifiable experience when possible. That means using dollar amounts, numbers, or percentages. If you saved your company money, how much? If you sold shoes, how many pairs per shift? If you worked as a server at a restaurant, how many patrons did you serve per hour? Maybe you drove for a rideshare company. Well, how many people did you pick up? How many rides did you get? I also recommend using the formula PAR. PAR stands for project or problem, action, and result. On page 5 of the resume handbook, you can see an example of PAR. The example reads, designed and produced digital flyers for virtual career fair that increased attendance in the event by 10%. So let's break that down. Designed and produce is the action. Digital flyers for the virtual career fair is the project that increased attendance in the event by 10%. That's the result. So, as you are describing your work experience, try to follow this formula. Another tip is to use positive action words when describing your skills and responsibilities. On page 12 and 13, you will see a word bank with action-based words. Start all your bullet points under your work experience with these words to ensure that you are describing your qualifications accurately. Lastly, be sure to list your bullet points in order of priority or importance. Skills and accomplishments. Sometimes people prefer to showcase their skills before their work experience section. Some people prefer to showcase their skills after. It really doesn't matter. Again, make sure the skills you include in your resume is something the employer has included in the job description. For the chronological resume, list skills with bullet points. For the hybrid resume, select 2 or 3 skill sets, then describe what the skills are or how you use them. See the example on page 20 of the resume handbook. Include computer skills or languages spoken if applicable. Hard skills versus soft skills. You always want to use a balance of both sets of skills. Hard skills are technical skills that are directly related to a job. Soft skills represent the qualities or characteristics you have and can be transferable to different jobs and industries. Try to incorporate both when describing your work experience. Let's take a look at some examples of hard skills and soft skills. In the graphic on the left-hand side, you can see hard skills include computer skills, mathematical or numeracy skills, knowing a foreign language, skills in physics, and maybe skills in data analytics. Some examples of soft skills include communication skills, leadership skills, flexibility and adaptability skills, decision-making skills, and creativity. On page 14, you can see how hard skills and soft skills are used in your resume. Education and training. The education section is simple and straightforward. List your education by including the school name and training program or major. List the degree or certificate that you've earned, your graduation or completion date. If your education is still in progress, then you can write current. Or if you know the expected graduation date, then you can include that. Honors and GPA are optional. If you have above a 3.0, then you can include it. Including your GPA is typically for recent graduates. Lastly, list any relevant coursework that might add value to your resume. Think about the job you're applying for. If it requires computer skills and you completed a Microsoft Office course, then include that. If you took a medical terminology course or anatomy and physiology, and you're applying for some sort of healthcare or medical position, then that is worth mentioning in your resume. The last section is optional. This is volunteer work. If you are someone who lacks work experience, a great way to build experience, network with others, and discover more employment opportunities is through volunteering. It's a great way to get involved, gain skills, confidence, and experience. Also, if you are in competition with someone for a job and you both have similar work experience and educational background, but one of you did 6 months of volunteer work while you were in school, well, guess who's going to have more of the advantage? That's right, the person who did volunteer work in their community. If you decide to include a volunteer work section in your resume, be sure to include that at the bottom. Now we're going to switch gears to cover letters. So what is a cover letter? Well, a cover letter is a one-page letter explaining why you are a good fit for a job. It is your first opportunity to make a good impression, sell yourself, and stand out from the rest of the competition. The purpose of a cover letter is to introduce yourself and compel an employer to learn more about you. Your goal is to capture the employer's attention and persuade them to invite you for an interview. Are cover letters needed? Well, that depends on the situation. If the application only asks for a resume, then only include your resume. If it asks to include it, then be sure to do so. If it says cover letter optional, then it's something I recommend to always include one, especially if it's a well-written cover letter. How to write a cover letter. Again, these are just some basic tips, but we will dive into cover letters later in the module. Tip number 1, personalized. Always address your cover letter to someone. Never use to whom it may concern. If you're unable to find out who to address your cover letter to, then it is okay to say, "Dear hiring manager." Research. Make sure you Google the organization or the company. You can go on Glassdoor to see their reviews and what other employees, whether current or former, have said about the company. You can also go on the company's website to read about their missions and values. Number 3, convince. Explain how you are uniquely qualified for the job. Your experience can be different from someone else's, so make sure to highlight that. Be clear and be concise. Lastly, proofread. Make sure you proofread not just your cover letter, but also your resume. Any spelling or grammar mistake can end your chances of getting an interview. Here are some additional tips on how to compose your cover letter. Remember that the best cover letters tell a story. The main character is you. The plot is your education and experience. The conflict is the job requirement or qualifications. And the resolution is weaving together the job description and explaining how your experience and skills meet those requirements. In the resume handbook, we have a section for cover letters on page 23, which include a template and an example. The last thing I want to talk about very briefly is the references, which is on page 27 of our resume handbook. A professional reference is a recommendation from a person who can vouch for your qualifications for a job. References can come from employers, which is a former supervisor or a coworker, counselors or professors, or even classmates. Try to avoid using friends or family members as references. Be sure to always communicate with your reference about the jobs you are applying for and the skills and qualifications you want them to highlight. There's been a few instances where students have put me down for references and did not tell me. I would receive emails or phone calls regarding a reference check. I would be completely thrown off guard. That is not something you want to do. A big reason why you want to communicate with your references is because it gives your reference an opportunity to prepare to talk about you. The better prepared your reference is, the better they can speak about how great you are at what you do. That is the end of the lecture. You can now move on to the next part of the module.